The merchant ship Prosperity's Gate moved through the darkness of space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Inside its metal walls, 400 passengers from dozens of different worlds slept, ate, worked, and dreamed of their destinations. Some were going home. Others were running away. All of them trusted that the Catharn crew would deliver them safely. Captain Zekthar sat in his command chair, his scaled fingers drumming against the armrest. The Catharn were known throughout the galaxy for their business sense. They ran the most profitable shipping routes, charged fair prices, and always delivered on time. Zekthar had commanded merchant vessels for 30 years without a single major incident. He was proud of his record. That pride shattered when the engine room alarm screamed through the ship. "Report," Zekthar hissed, his tongue flicking out in agitation. His engineer's voice crackled over the communication system. "Captain, we have a cascade failure in the primary drive core. Secondary systems are compensating, but..." A pause. "Sir, sections 7 through 12 are losing power. Life support in those areas will fail within 72 hours. Zekthar's claws dug into his armrest. Sections 7 through 12. The cheaper passenger quarters. 63 passengers, mostly lower-class travelers who had bought the discount tickets. He pulled up the ship's schematics on his display and studied them with cold calculation. "Can we restore power to those sections?" he asked. "Negative, Captain. The damage is too severe. We would need to stop and conduct repairs. Estimated time, 5 days. But sir, we're in the Edge territories." "If we stop here?" Zekthar understood. The Edge territories had no law, no protection, no Galactic Council patrols. Pirates hunted here. Raiders looked for easy prey. A stopped ship was a dead ship. He looked at the numbers on his screen, running calculations that every merchant captain learned in training. Cost of rescue, cost of delay, insurance payouts, legal liabilities, profit margins. "Seal sections 7 through 12, he said quietly. His first officer turned to stare at him. "Captain, you heard me. Emergency bulkheads. Seal those sections immediately. We continue to station Meridian at full speed. But sir, the passengers will be compensated according to standard insurance protocols." Zekthar interrupted. "Their families will receive full payouts. It's regrettable, but we cannot risk 400 lives for 63. We cannot stop in the Edge territories. Make it so." The first officer hesitated for only a moment before following orders. Throughout the ship, massive doors slammed shut, cutting off sections 7 through 12 from the rest of the Prosperity's Gate. Inside those sections, passengers looked up in confusion as red emergency lights began to flash. Belnara was reading in her small cabin when the lights changed. She was a Thessian, tall and slender with silvery skin that reflected light in patterns that showed her emotions. Right now, those patterns showed confusion and growing fear. She had paid everything she owned for this ticket, traveling to a new world where she hoped to teach at a university. Her cabin was tiny and cold, but it was hers. The door to her cabin wouldn't open anymore. When she pressed the control panel, nothing happened. The intercom crackled to life, and Captain Zekthar's voice filled her small space. "Attention passengers in sections 7 through 12. This is Captain Zekthar. I regret to inform you that a catastrophic engine failure has compromised your sections of the ship. For the safety of all passengers, these sections have been sealed. Life support will maintain for approximately 72 hours. The Galactic Council and your families will be notified. Your insurance providers will be contacted immediately. The Prosperity's Gate cannot stop for repairs in this region. This decision was not made lightly. May the stars guide your spirits." Then silence. Belnara stared at the intercom speaker, unable to process what she had just heard. "Sealed? 72 hours? She rushed to her door and began pounding on it, screaming for help. In the corridor outside, she heard other voices joining hers. Panic spread through the sealed sections like fire. In cabin 723, Kurit the insectoid engineer stopped in the middle of his meditation. His compound eyes processed the captain's words slowly. Kurt had worked on ships for most of his life. He understood machinery better than he understood people. He pulled out his personal tools and went into the corridor. Other passengers were crying, screaming, beating on the walls. Kurt ignored them and examined the sealed bulkhead door. It was locked from the other side. Emergency protocols unbreakable. He calculated their remaining time based on the number of passengers in these sections and the available oxygen. The captain had been optimistic. They had maybe 60 hours, not 72. In the common area of Section 9, Uma pressed against the viewing port, looking out at the stars. Uma was young, barely 8 cycles old in their species counting. They were aquatic, needing to keep their skin moist constantly. Their parent had been in Section 5 when the doors closed. Now Uma was alone, surrounded by strange beings who spoke languages they barely understood. The child's skin was already drying out, turning gray at the edges. Hours passed. Some passengers tried to force the doors open. Others prayed to their various gods. A few, like Kurt, tried to find solutions. He mapped the electrical systems, looking for any way to restore communications with the main ship or call for help. Velnara found him working in an access panel, his multiple limbs moving with precise efficiency. "Can you fix it?" she asked, her skin pattern showing desperate hope. "Fix what?" Kurt replied without stopping his work. "The door? No. The life support? No. The captain's conscience? Definitely no. Then what are you doing?" "Building a distress beacon. Long range. Very powerful. Probably illegal given the frequencies I'll use." His mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh. "What will they do? Give a dead bug a fine?" Velnara sat down beside him. "Will anyone hear it?" "We're in the Edge territories." "Probably not," Kurt admitted. "The Galactic Council doesn't patrol here. Too expensive. Not profitable. No one comes to the Edge unless they have to." He attached 2 wires and a spark flew. "But doing nothing guarantees death. Doing something gives us a very tiny chance. I prefer tiny chances over certainty." Velnara helped him gather parts. They raided the emergency supply lockers, pulling out anything with a power source or transmitter. Other passengers watched them work with dead eyes. Some had already given up, sitting quietly in their cabins, recording final messages to families who might never receive them. The temperature dropped as life support systems struggled. Velnara's breath became visible in the air. She wrapped herself in blankets and kept working. Kurt didn't seem to notice the cold. His species was used to extreme conditions. After 36 hours, the beacon was ready. It wasn't pretty. It was a mess of wires, components, and emergency equipment all tied together with Kurt's skill and desperation. But when he activated it, it screamed into the void on every frequency he could generate. "Now we wait," he said. "For how long?" Velnara asked. Her patterns had gone dim, showing exhaustion and fading hope. "Until our air runs out or someone answers," Kurt replied. "Whichever comes first." They sat together in the cold, watching the beacon's light pulse. Around them, passengers lay still, conserving oxygen. Some had already stopped breathing. Uma had curled into a ball in the corner, skin cracked and gray, barely conscious. Velnara closed her eyes and thought about all the things she would never do. The students she would never teach. The books she would never write. The life she would never live. All because the numbers didn't add up. All because saving them cost too much. She was recording a final message to her sister when Kurt suddenly jerked upright. "We have a response," he said, his voice shocked. Velnara's eyes snapped open. "What?" "The beacon." Something answered. He adjusted his makeshift equipment, his limbs shaking with excitement or cold or both. "I'm getting a signal. It's in a language I don't recognize." The speakers crackled with harsh, strange sounds. Then the voice switched to Galactic Common, speaking with an accent Velnara had never heard before. "Unknown vessel, this is UTSC Indomitable. We have received your distress call. Transmit your coordinates and status immediately. We are coming for you." Velnara and Kurt stared at each other in the flickering emergency lights. Neither of them had ever heard of UTSC. Neither knew what an Indomitable was. But someone had answered, someone was coming. Kurt's limbs trembled as he worked the makeshift communication system. His compound eyes reflected the dim emergency lights as he transmitted their coordinates into the darkness. Beside him, Velnara felt her skin patterns flicker with something she had thought was dead inside her. Hope. Dangerous, painful hope. "This is Velnara of the merchant ship Prosperity's Gate," she spoke into the transmitter, her voice cracking. "We are 63 passengers abandoned in sealed sections. Life support critical. We have maybe 24 hours of breathable air remaining." The response came immediately, and this time the voice sounded different. Angry. "Say again. Did you say abandoned? Deliberately abandoned?" Velnara explained quickly. "The engine failure. The captain's decision. The sealed doors." As she spoke, she heard something in the human voice that she recognized from her own species. Fury. Pure burning fury. Those heartless. The human voice cut off sharply. Another voice, female and commanding, took over. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the UTSC Indomitable. I am the captain of this vessel. We are burning toward your position at maximum speed. ETA 17 hours. I need you to listen carefully. Reduce all physical activity. Lie down if possible. Slow breathing. Lower the temperature as much as you can tolerate. Make your oxygen last. We are coming for you. Do you understand? Yes, Velnara whispered. But who are you? What is UTSC? What are humans? There was a pause. You don't know about humans? Should we? Another pause, longer this time. Apparently not. That's a long story for later. Right now, focus on staying alive. We'll be there in 17 hours. Can you make it? Kurt did quick calculations in his head. It will be very close, he admitted. But we will try. Trying is all I'm asking, Commander Chen replied. We're going to stay on this channel. Talk to us, stay awake, stay focused. You're not alone anymore. Velnara felt tears form in her eyes. She had accepted death. They all had, but now this stranger from a species she had never heard of was racing through space to save them. Why, she asked. Why are you doing this? The question seemed to confuse the human. Because you need help, Commander Chen said simply. What other reason would there be? After the communication, Velnara and Kurt spread the news through the sealed sections. Some passengers didn't believe it. Others were too far gone to care. But a few felt that dangerous hope kindle in their hearts. They rationed the remaining air, lying still in the cold, breathing slowly. Uma, the young aquatic child, was in bad condition. Their skin had turned completely gray and started to crack. An elderly Methian couple wrapped Uma in wet cloths, using their precious water ration to keep the child's skin moist. They didn't know if Uma would survive long enough to see rescue. Kurt accessed the ship's limited database through his terminal, searching for information about humans. What he found disturbed him. There wasn't much data, and what existed was buried in obscure files marked with warning symbols. Found something, he told Velnara. Humans, species classification mammalian bipeds. Origin planet called Earth. They made contact with the Galactic Council 47 years ago. And? Velnara asked. And the Council rejected their application for membership, classified them as unsuitable for galactic civilization. Kurt's mandibles clicked nervously. The reasons listed are concerning. Excessive emotional volatility, irrational resource expenditure on rescue operations, dangerous levels of empathy, unpredictable behavior, history of extreme violence but also extreme compassion. The evaluation concluded they were too chaotic for integration into Council society. Velnara absorbed this information. So they're dangerous? The file says they might be, Kurt replied. But they also answered our distress call when no one else would. The Council ships won't come here. Too risky, too expensive. But these humans are racing toward us despite the dangers. Maybe that's what the Council means by irrational, Velnara said quietly. Hour by hour, the air grew thinner. People started to gasp with each breath. Some fell unconscious. The cold became brutal as life support systems continued failing. Velnara's silver skin turned blue-gray. Kurt moved slower, his insectoid metabolism struggling with the low oxygen. But Commander Chen kept talking to them. Every hour, her voice came through the speakers asking for status updates, telling them about the Indomitable's progress, keeping them connected to life. She told them about her crew, about how they had been on a supply run when they picked up the distress call. She explained how they had diverted immediately, burning fuel they couldn't really spare. Won't you get in trouble? Velnara asked during one communication. Her voice was weak now, barely a whisper. Probably, Chen admitted. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today's problem is getting to you. Your superiors will be angry, Kurt said. The fuel cost alone. I'll handle my superiors, Chen interrupted. You just focus on breathing. At hour 53, people started dying faster. The carbon dioxide levels had become toxic. Velnara held the hand of a Drexian male as he took his last breath. She had never met him before this voyage. She didn't even know his name. But she held his hand so he wouldn't die alone. 8 more died before sensors detected something approaching. We have a ship on scanners, Kurt reported, his voice slurred from oxygen deprivation. It's moving very fast, too fast. No one should approach at those speeds. The deceleration would kill the crew. But the ship slowed anyway, impossible as it seemed. Through the viewing port, Velnara saw it arrive. The Indomitable was smaller than she expected. It was dark gray, covered in scars and repairs, bristling with weapons and armor plating. It looked nothing like the elegant vessels of the Galactic Council. This ship looked like it had been built for war and had seen plenty of it. Prosperity's Gate Sections 7 through 12. This is Indomitable. We are matching velocity and preparing to breach your hull. Stand clear of Section 7 bulkhead door. Commander Chen's voice was crisp and professional now. Medical teams are standing by. Hold on just a little longer. Velnara didn't have the strength to stand. She lay on the cold floor and watched as cutting torches burned through the sealed bulkhead door. Sparks flew like stars being born. The metal screamed and peeled back. Fresh air rushed in so pure and clean it hurt to breathe. Figures in heavy armor pushed through the opening. They moved with military precision, carrying equipment and medical supplies. The first one stopped when he saw Velnara lying on the floor. Through his helmet visor, she saw his face. Humans looked surprisingly similar to some other species she knew. 2 eyes, nose, mouth, skin that varied in color. This one had dark skin and worried eyes. "Ma'am, I'm Corporal Davis. Can you stand?" he asked. Velnara tried to answer but couldn't form words. Her lungs burned. Her body wouldn't move. The human didn't hesitate. He lifted her carefully, his armored suit making her weight nothing. "I got you. You're safe now." More humans flooded through the breach. They moved through the sections with organized efficiency, checking every cabin, every corner. They found Uma barely alive in the corner and immediately surrounded the child with medical attention. They found the dead and treated them with unexpected reverence, closing their eyes and covering them with thermal blankets. Kurt watched as a female human medic approached him. She pulled out a scanner and ran it over his body. "Xenobiology isn't my specialty," she admitted, "but your oxygen saturation is critical. Let me get you to the med bay." "I can walk," Kurt insisted, trying to stand. His legs gave out. The medic caught him. "Sure you can, but humor me anyway." She lifted him onto a stretcher with surprising gentleness. "I'm Dr. Yuki Tanaka. You're the one who built that distress beacon, right? Hell of a piece of work. Saved all your lives." "A human ship saved our lives," Kurt corrected her. "I only made a call into the dark." "And we heard you," Dr. Tanaka replied. "That's what we do." They were carried through the breach and into the Indomitable. The ship's interior was cramped and utilitarian. Everything was metal and function, no decorative elements. It smelled like recycled air, machine oil, and something else. Something that Velnara would later learn was coffee. The medical bay was organized chaos. Human medics worked on patients they had never seen before, adapting their treatments on the fly. They consulted databases, called for advice over communications, and improvised solutions for alien physiologies. When they didn't know something, they admitted it and tried anyway. Velnara was placed on a medical bed, oxygen mask, warm blankets, an IV line that a medic carefully inserted after checking that Thessian biology was compatible. The warmth felt like heaven after the brutal cold. Commander Sarah Chen entered the medical bay. She was shorter than Velnara expected, with dark hair pulled back, tired eyes, and grease stains on her uniform. She looked exhausted. She walked between the beds, checking on each rescued passenger personally. When she reached Velnara, she stopped. "How are you feeling?" "Alive," Velnara whispered. "Thanks to you," Chen smiled slightly. "Thanks to Kurt's beacon. All we did was show up. You came across dangerous space. You burned fuel you needed. Why?" Chen looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "You sent a distress call. People needed help." She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the universe. "What else would we do?" Velnara stared at her. In that moment, she understood what the Galactic Council had meant about humans being unsuitable. The UTSC Indomitable was nothing like any ship Velnara had ever been on. It was loud. Pipes rattled. The engines hummed with a deep vibration that she could feel through the walls. Crew members rushed through corridors, shouting to each other in their strange language and in galactic common. Everything felt rushed, barely controlled, on the edge of chaos, but it was alive. So alive. Velnara spent 2 days recovering in the medical bay. Dr. Tanaka checked on her regularly, running tests and adjusting treatments. The human doctor worked with visible frustration at times, consulting databases about Thessian biology that contained incomplete information, but she never gave up, never stopped trying. Your lungs are healing well, Dr. Tanaka said during one examination. The oxygen deprivation caused damage, but nothing permanent. You were lucky. Lucky? Velnara repeated. 8 of us died waiting for you. Dr. Tanaka's face fell. I know, I'm sorry we couldn't get there faster. We pushed the engines beyond safety limits as it was. We're lucky the ship didn't tear itself apart during acceleration. Velnara touched the doctor's hand. You saved 55 lives. That's what matters. Try telling that to the families of the 8 who didn't make it, Dr. Tanaka replied quietly. She looked exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. Every life matters. That phrase echoed what Commander Chen had said. Every life matters. Not every profitable life. Not every useful life. Just every life. It was such a simple concept, but Velnara had never heard it stated so absolutely before. Kurt recovered faster than most. His species was resilient. Within a day, he was wandering the ship with permission, studying the human technology with fascination. He found Velnara in the medical bay and pulled up a chair beside her bed. These humans are fascinating, he said, his mandibles clicking excitedly. Their technology is less advanced than Council standard in many ways. Their computers are slower. Their engines are less efficient. But they compensate with cleverness. They jury-rig solutions. They adapt. And their weapons, he paused. Their weapons are extremely advanced. This ship is designed for war. Did you ask them about that? Velnara asked. Yes. The crew member I spoke to, a young male named Jackson, said they've been fighting pirates in the Edge territories for years. The Galactic Council won't patrol here, so humans do it instead. They protect trade routes, respond to distress calls, and hunt down raiders. They ask for nothing in return. Why would they do that? Kurt's limbs gestured in what might have been a shrug. Because someone should, according to Jackson. He said it very simply, as if there was no other logical answer. Velnara thought about this. The Galactic Council had millions of ships, vast resources, and incredible technology, but they wouldn't patrol the Edge territories because it wasn't profitable. Humans, with their smaller numbers and limited resources, did it anyway. The math didn't make sense by any economic standard. Maybe that was the point. On the 3rd day, Commander Chen called a meeting in the ship's mess hall. All 55 survivors who were healthy enough to attend gathered in the cramped space. Human crew members stood along the walls watching quietly. The mess hall smelled like the strange human drink called coffee and something cooking that Velnara couldn't identify. Chen stood at the front of the room. Up close, Velnara could see how young she was. Maybe 30 years by human standards, which Kurt had explained was fairly young for their species. Too young to be commanding a warship, but her crew looked at her with absolute trust. First, I want to welcome all of you to the Indomitable, Chen began. I'm sorry it's cramped. We weren't built for passenger transport. My crew has given up their quarters for you. We're bunking in shifts and sleeping in the cargo bay. It's not comfortable, but it works. Velnara felt her skin patterns flush with embarrassment. Commander, you didn't need to do that. Where else would you sleep? Chen asked simply. Now let's talk about what happens next. We're currently 3 days from Station Meridian. That's the nearest Council station. We can take you there if you want. However, she paused. I need to be honest with you. The Galactic Council doesn't like humans very much. When we arrive with you, there will be questions, investigations, possibly legal trouble for both you and us. Legal trouble? An elderly Drexian male asked. For being rescued? Shen's jaw tightened. The Council has rules about jurisdiction. The Prosperity's Gate was a Council-registered vessel. We technically interfered with a Council matter by boarding you. The captain of that ship has already filed a formal complaint claiming we acted illegally. Angry muttering filled the mess hall. Velnara stood up, her patterns flashing bright with rage. He left us to die and now complains about our rescue? Unfortunately, yes, Chen replied. According to Council maritime law, he was within his rights to make the decision he made. It's considered an acceptable cost-benefit calculation in emergency situations. What we did, responding to your distress call without Council authorization in Council space, that's technically illegal. That's insane, Kurt said. His voice was flat, emotionless, which for his species indicated extreme anger. You saved our lives. We don't regret it, Chen said firmly. And we'd do it again. But I wanted you to know what you're walking into at Station Meridian. There's an alternative. She gestured to a star chart on the wall display. We can take you to Freeport Haven. It's a human-run station in neutral space. It'll take 2 extra days and we'll be burning fuel we really can't spare, but there won't be council interference. You can figure out your next steps from there. The survivors looked at each other. Velnara spoke first. I vote for Freeport Haven. I don't want to give the council a chance to cause problems for Commander Chen and her crew. Others nodded in agreement. The vote was unanimous. They would go to the human station. Chen smiled, looking relieved. Thank you. That makes things simpler. She turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. You're guests on this ship, but we're short-handed. If any of you want to help out, we've got jobs. Nothing complicated, just basic stuff. We'd appreciate it. Over the next 2 days, the survivors integrated into the ship's routine. Kurt worked with the engineering team, sharing his knowledge and learning human techniques. The elderly Drexian couple, whose names were Mex and Rila, helped in the galley preparing food. They adapted human recipes for different species' dietary needs and created meals that everyone could eat. Velnara found herself in the ship's small library, helping to translate documents from Galactic Common to Human Standard. The library was tiny, just one room with physical books and digital files, but it was treasured. She saw crew members reading during their breaks, desperate for any escape from the monotony of space travel. She learned about Earth during those days. A world covered in water and life. Humans were relatively new to space, having developed faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago. They had reached out to the Galactic Council with excitement and hope, and been rejected. Deemed unsuitable. Too emotional. Too irrational. Too dangerous, so humans built their own way. They established stations in neutral space. They formed trade agreements with independent colonies. They protected shipping routes that the Council ignored. And they responded to every distress call, no matter the cost. Why? Velnara asked Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the ship's second officer. They were sitting in the mess hall during a quiet moment. Why do humans do this? Help strangers? Risk your lives? Spend resources you can't afford? Webb was an older human with gray hair and scars on his hands. He thought about the question for a long time before answering. I guess because we remember what it's like to be alone, he finally said. Humans spent thousands of years on Earth thinking we were the only intelligent life in the universe. We were isolated, alone in the dark. When we finally reached the stars and found others, we thought... He paused. We thought we'd find family, community. Instead, we found a council that didn't want us. That must have hurt, Velnara said softly. It did. Still does sometimes. Webb smiled sadly. But it taught us something important. If we had been in trouble, if Earth had needed help, the Council wouldn't have come. So we decided to be what the Council wasn't. We decided that when someone calls out in the dark, there should be an answer. Always. Velnara felt her pattern shift to show deep respect. That's beautiful. It's necessary, Webb corrected. The galaxy is big and dark and dangerous. If we don't look out for each other, who will? The Council. He laughed bitterly. They'll help you if the profit margin is acceptable. We'll help because you need it. That's the difference. Young Uma had recovered enough to leave the medical bay. The aquatic child explored the ship with wonder, asking questions in broken Galactic Common. The crew adopted Uma immediately, taking turns showing the child different parts of the ship and teaching them human words. Corporal Davis, the Marine who had carried Velnara to safety, seemed especially attached. He carried a water sprayer and regularly misted Uma's skin to keep it moist. Do you have children? Velnara asked Davis one day. No, ma'am, he replied. But I have a niece about Uma's age back on Earth. I miss her. Helping Uma helps me feel closer to home, I guess. On the 5th day since rescue, Freeport Haven appeared on the sensors. It was a massive station built from connected modules, constantly expanding. Kurt had never been good at staying quiet. Within 3 days of arriving at Freeport Haven, he had connected with independent communication networks that spanned the edge territories and beyond. He sent out his message carefully, attaching evidence, recordings of the distress call, logs from the sealed sections, testimonies from survivors, and scan data from the Prosperity's gate showing the deliberate abandonment. He titled his message simply, "We were left to die. Humans answered." The message spread like fire in dry grass. It jumped from station to station, from ship to ship, from world to world. Independent media networks picked it up. Underground news sources that the Galactic Council couldn't control began broadcasting the story. Within a week, Billions of people across hundreds of worlds knew what had happened. The response was immediate and explosive. On the lower decks of council stations, where the working class lived, people began talking. They shared stories of their own, times when they needed help and the council calculated it wasn't worth the cost. Medical emergencies ignored because treatment was too expensive. Rescue operations canceled because the victims weren't important enough. It had always been this way, so people accepted it until now. Until they heard about humans who crossed dangerous space to save strangers. Humans who didn't calculate cost versus benefit. Humans who simply came because someone needed help. Velnara watched the reaction from her new quarters on Freeport Haven. She had indeed been hired by the Academy to teach Galactic Common and literature. Her small apartment had a window showing the stars, and she spent hours reading the messages flooding through communication channels. "You've started something," Commander Chen told her when they met for coffee at a station cafe. Chen was docked for resupply and repairs, preparing for another patrol. "Kurt started it," Velnara corrected. "I just told my story." "Stories have power," Chen replied. She looked tired. "The council isn't happy. They've filed formal protests. They're calling us pirates, claiming we're spreading anti-council propaganda." "What will you do?" Chen smiled grimly. "Exactly what we've been doing. Someone needs to patrol the edge territories. Someone needs to answer distress calls. The council won't do it, so we will." 2 weeks after the story broke, something new happened. A merchant vessel in the edge territories suffered a hull breach. 15 crew members were trapped in a damaged section, life support failing. The ship's captain sent out a distress call on council emergency frequencies. Then he waited. 5 hours passed. No council ships responded. The captain, a real trader named Kosh, made a decision. He switched to the frequency humans monitored and sent out a new call. "This is merchant vessel Bright Horizon requesting assistance. We have 15 crew in danger. If any human ships are in range, please respond." The UTSC Vigilant answered within minutes. Captain Liu and her crew arrived 8 hours later. They rescued all 15 crew members. When Kosh tried to pay them, Captain Liu refused. "No payment needed. Just pass it forward." The story of the Bright Horizon rescue spread almost as fast as the first one. Then another incident happened. And another. Each time human ships responded. Each time they asked for nothing in return. And each time more people learned that there was an alternative to the council's cold calculations. On Station Meridian, a crowd gathered in the main plaza. They were holding signs written in dozens of languages. "We hear you. Every life matters. Humans showed us better." Station security didn't know what to do. The protest was peaceful, but it was also unprecedented. People didn't protest on council stations. They accepted the way things were. But now they had seen something different. And they wanted it. Captain Zekthar of the Prosperity's Gate found himself facing consequences he never expected. The council found his actions legally acceptable. But the court of public opinion was less forgiving. When he docked at his next station, dock workers refused to service his ship. Suppliers refused to sell him fuel. Passengers demanded refunds on their tickets, unwilling to travel on a vessel commanded by someone who had abandoned people to die. His company, desperate to contain the damage, fired him. They released statements condemning his actions, claiming he had violated company policy. Everyone knew this was a lie. He had followed standard procedure. But the company needed a scapegoat, and Zekthar became it. He sat in a cheap hotel on a third-rate station, watching his career collapse around him. He had commanded ships for 30 years. He had followed the rules, done everything by the book, and now he was ruined because some emotional species had decided that math didn't matter. On Earth, Admiral Marcus Webb sat in a meeting with the Unified Human Council. The Admiral was an older man, weathered by years of space service, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened as council representatives argued about the situation. "We're spreading ourselves too thin," one representative said. "Every week, more ships divert to answer distress calls. Our patrols are suffering. Our supply lines are stretched. We can't keep this up." "Then what do you suggest?" Admiral Webb asked quietly. "That we stop answering calls for help? I suggest we be realistic about our capabilities. We're not the galaxy's rescue service, aren't we?" Webb leaned forward. "Because right now we're the only ones doing it. The Galactic Council has the resources to help but chooses not to. We have limited resources but help anyway. What does that say about them? What does that say about us? It says we're going to bankrupt ourselves playing hero, another representative argued. Webb stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. My grandfather told me a story once. He was a firefighter back before we had automated systems. He said firefighters didn't calculate whether saving a person was economically viable. They didn't check bank accounts before running into burning buildings. They saved people because that's what humans do. He looked around the room. We got rejected by the Galactic Council for being too emotional, too irrational. They called it a weakness. I call it our greatest strength. Pretty words don't pay for fuel, a representative countered. No, but they inspire people to do better, Webb replied. We've received 53 applications from independent colonies this month, wanting to join the Terran Coalition. Not because we're rich or powerful, because they saw what we did for strangers and want to be part of something that matters. That's worth more than fuel. The debate continued for hours, but Webb knew he had already won. Humanity would continue answering distress calls. It was who they were. On Freeport Haven, Velnara received a message from her sister on her homeworld. She played it in her quarters, watching her sister's holographic image materialize. Velnara, everyone is talking about what happened to you, about the humans who saved you. Our planetary council is debating whether to establish trade relations with the Terran Coalition. Some are resisting because the Galactic Council disapproves, but others are saying it's time we stood up for what's right instead of what's profitable. Her sister paused, wiping tears from her eyes. I thought I'd lost you. When I got the message that your ship had an accident, that you were among the casualties, I couldn't breathe. Then I got your second message saying you were alive, that humans had saved you. Velnara, I don't care what the council says about them. They gave me back my sister. I will always be grateful. Velnara stopped the playback and looked out her window at the stars. She thought about Commander Chen, pushing her ship beyond safety limits to reach strangers. About Dr. Tanaka, working around the clock to heal alien patients. About Corporal Davis carrying a dying Thessian scholar to safety. About an entire species that refused to let cold math determine who deserved to live. The next day, she received a visitor at the academy. Admiral Marcus Webb himself, touring Freeport Haven to inspect facilities and meet with colony representatives. He stopped by her classroom where she was teaching students about galactic common literature. After class, he asked to speak with her privately. They walked through the station gardens, an artificial green space maintained by the station crew. I've read your testimony, Webb said, about the Prosperity's Gate, about our rescue. It's been influential. I only told the truth, Velnara replied. Truth has a way of changing things. Webb stopped by a flowering plant that had been imported from Earth. You asked Commander Chen why we do this, why we help. I wanted to give you a fuller answer. Velnara waited while the Admiral collected his thoughts. Humans nearly destroyed ourselves once. Webb began. Centuries ago, we had wars that killed millions. We polluted our planet. We hurt each other over resources and territory and beliefs. We almost didn't make it. He touched the flower gently. But we learned. Slowly, painfully, we learned that we survived only when we helped each other. When we decided that every human life had value, that lesson saved us. And now you extend that lesson to all species, Velnara said. We try, Webb replied. The Galactic Council sees resources and calculations. We see people. Maybe that makes us irrational. But I'd rather be irrationally compassionate than rationally cruel. He turned to her. We're going to make a formal announcement. What Commander Chen did, what all our ships do when they answer distress calls, that's now official policy. The distress call doctrine. Any being, any species, anywhere. 6 months passed. 6 months that changed the galaxy in ways the Galactic Council could never have predicted. Velnara stood in front of her classroom at Freeport Haven Academy, teaching a literature class to 30 students from 15 different species. They were studying human poetry today, trying to understand the emotional depth that had made humans so unsuitable for council membership. What does this line mean? A young Vril student asked, pointing to a poem displayed on the screen. Hope is the thing with feathers? Velnara smiled. The human poet Emily Dickinson was comparing hope to a bird, something that lives inside you, that sings even in the darkness, that never asks for anything in return. She thought about the darkness of those sealed sections, the cold, the thinning air, the certainty of death. And then a voice in the dark saying, "We are coming for you." Yes, she understood hope with feathers now. She understood it perfectly. After class, she checked the news feeds. The stories came daily now. Another rescue. Another human ship burning across space to answer a distress call. The UTSC Phoenix had saved a mining colony when their life support failed. The UTSC Determination had pulled a crew from a ship caught in a radiation storm. The UTSC Steadfast had fought off pirates to protect a refugee convoy. And each time, humans asked for nothing in return. Just pass it forward. Those 3 words had become something larger than anyone expected. On stations throughout the Edge territories, people began forming their own rescue cooperatives. If humans could do it with limited resources, why couldn't others? Small ships, crewed by volunteers, started patrolling known danger zones. They painted the radio wave symbol on their hulls and adopted the motto, "We hear you." The movement spread to wealthier systems. Some corporations, seeing the positive public response, began funding rescue operations. They did it for publicity at first, but the pilots and crews who flew those missions often found something more: purpose, meaning, the satisfaction of saving lives without calculating the return on investment. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing alarm. They held emergency sessions. They passed resolutions condemning human interference. They threatened sanctions against any species that adopted Terran ideologies. But the more they pushed back, the more obvious their position became. They were trying to stop people from helping each other, and that made them look exactly like what they were. Cruel. On Station Meridian, a council station, something unprecedented happened. The dock workers' union went on strike. Not for better pay, not for improved conditions. They refused to service any ship whose captain had abandoned passengers or crew in distress situations. Within days, 3 major shipping companies had to revise their emergency protocols. The council sent in security forces to break the strike. The dock workers refused to budge. Then workers from other stations joined the strike in solidarity. Within a week, half the major stations in council space had work stoppages. The galactic economy began to suffer. The council was forced to negotiate. They agreed to implement new regulations requiring reasonable rescue efforts in emergency situations. The regulations had so many loopholes they were almost meaningless. But it was the first time in centuries the council had been forced to change policy due to public pressure. It was a small victory, but it was a beginning. Kurt now worked as an engineer on a human rescue ship, the UTSC Perseverance. He had asked Captain Chen for a recommendation, and she had written one enthusiastically. Humans didn't care that he wasn't human. They cared that he could fix things and that he believed in their mission. He was in the engine room when the distress call came. It was from a council vessel, a luxury liner called the Celestial Dream. Engine failure. 300 passengers in danger. The ship had already sent calls to council emergency services. No response after 6 hours. Captain Rodriguez, the Perseverance's commander, didn't hesitate. Set course, maximum burn. They reached the Celestial Dream in 14 hours. The rescue operation went smoothly. Kurt helped engineer temporary repairs, while the crew evacuated passengers to the Perseverance. Among the rescued was a council diplomat named Thex, a tall, elegant Zerelian who seemed shocked that a human ship had responded. "Why did you come?" Thex asked Captain Rodriguez. "We're a council vessel. Your government and ours aren't exactly friendly." Rodriguez, a stocky woman with graying hair, just shrugged. "You needed help. That's all that matters." "But the political implications?" "I don't do politics," Rodriguez interrupted. "I do rescues. You want to have political discussions, talk to people above my pay grade. Me, I just fly the ship and save people." Thex was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I've been a diplomat for 40 years. I've negotiated treaties between species. I've helped establish trade agreements worth billions of credits. But I've never met anyone who answered a call for help without asking what they'd get in return. Until today." "You should meet more humans then," Rodriguez replied. When they delivered the passengers to the nearest station, Thex requested permission to speak with the Perseverance crew. Rodriguez gathered everyone in the mess hall. Thek stood before them, his diplomatic robes looking out of place in the utilitarian space. "I wanted to thank you," Thex began. "Not just for the rescue, for showing me something I'd forgotten, or perhaps never truly understood." He looked at the faces around him, human and non-human. "When I began my career, I believed the Council represented the best of civilized society, order, efficiency, logic. But watching your crew work, I realized something. You have something we lost. You care, genuinely, deeply care about life. All life." He pulled out a datapad. "I'm submitting my resignation to the Council, and I'm applying for citizenship in the Terran Coalition, if you'll have me." Rodriguez smiled. "We'll have you. Welcome aboard." On Earth, in the Unified Human Council chambers, Admiral Webb received an unexpected visitor. A transmission from the Galactic Council itself. Not a low-level functionary this time. High Chancellor Vorn, one of the Council's most powerful members. Vorn's holographic image appeared, imposing and stern. "Admiral Webb, we need to talk." "I'm listening," Webb replied. "Your distress call doctrine is causing significant disruption to galactic order," Vorn said. "Trade routes are being reorganized around your patrol zones. Independent colonies are refusing Council protection in favor of Terran assistance. Several species are reconsidering their Council membership." "Is there a question in there somewhere?" Webb asked mildly. "We want you to stop. Limit your rescue operations to Terran space. Stay out of Council affairs." "No." Vorn's expression darkened. "You're in no position to refuse. We could blockade your systems, prohibit trade, isolate humanity completely." "You could try," Webb agreed. "But then you'd have to explain to your citizens why you're punishing the people who saved their lives. Go ahead. I'm sure that will go over well, especially given the current strikes and protests." Vorn was silent, clearly furious but unable to argue the point. Webb leaned forward. "Chancellor, let me be clear. We're not trying to destroy the Council. We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're just doing what we think is right. If that threatens your power, maybe your power deserves to be threatened." "You're idealistic fools," Vorn spat. "Maybe," Webb replied. "But we're idealistic fools who answer distress calls. What are you?" The transmission ended abruptly. Webb sat back in his chair, knowing he'd probably just made things worse politically. But he didn't regret it. Some things were more important than politics. Young Uma was growing up on Freeport Haven. The aquatic child had been adopted by a human couple, Lisa and James Chen, who had learned to maintain the specialized environment Uma needed. They weren't related to Commander Sarah Chen, though Uma liked to pretend they were. Uma went to school with human children and learned about Earth. The child's favorite subject was human history, all the mistakes humans had made, all the wars and cruelty and stupidity, but also all the moments of compassion, the helpers who ran toward danger, the people who risked everything for strangers, the slow, painful progress toward being better. "Why did humans change?" Uma asked Lisa one evening during dinner. Lisa thought about the question. "I think we realized we had a choice. We could keep being cruel, or we could try to be kind. And enough of us chose kindness that it became who we are." "Can other species choose too?" Uma asked. "Yes," Lisa said firmly. "That's what's happening now. All across the galaxy, people are choosing to be better, your birth species included." Uma smiled. The child's homeworld had indeed changed. After hearing about Uma's rescue, they had passed laws protecting abandoned passengers and crew. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Velnara received a message from Commander Sarah Chen. The Indomitable was returning to Freeport Haven for major repairs and resupply. Chen asked if Velnara wanted to meet for coffee. They sat in the same cafe where they'd met months before. Chen looked even more tired now, with new scars on her hands and gray starting to show in her hair. But her eyes were bright. "I've answered 43 distress calls since I last saw you," Chen said. "Saved 612 lives, lost 3 crew members in the process." Her voice caught slightly. "Good people. They died pulling others from a fire.